my big old truck and I'm going back home and I'm feeling lucky, heading south of Watford, south of Watford. Turning down the motorway and heading south with the heavy, heavy eyes and the dry dirt mouth, going south of Watford, south of Watford. Motorway's coming like a video game at 100 miles an hour. The old truck groans and the wheels complain, but I can't go any slower. South of Watford, south of Watford.
Who said the British film industry couldn't make sensitive, subtle, serious movies? That was the occult scene Hammer House of Horror style. It seems that magic and witchcraft have definitely got a sensational reputation. You know the sort of thing, news of the world, Sunday school teacher in mad sex orgy on the altar. If you're interested in the occult, then you're probably classed as big a threat to British society as the militant tendency. But despite all that, or perhaps because of it, the scene is booming. There's magazines and books and thousands of people buying them, and shops like this one springing up to cater for the interest. What's it all about? What exactly does a witch do? Is it sinister? Is it comic? Well, if you're interested, why not come with me and have a little dabble? Oh, by the way, welcome back to south of Watford.
Mysteries is the kind of place where people make their first contact with the world of the occult. Newcomers to the scene normally start out with a book and later graduate to all the paraphernalia of witchcraft and magic. Pick up a crystal ball or a phrenologist's skull or gaze at all the ancient occult symbols and you too may fall under the spell of magic. But if you don't understand all the knickknacks yourself, well, make your way to the back of the shop and meet clairvoyant Namron, who's been reading palms and tarot cards since he was in his teens.
Now, show me your left hand, please. Turn. Turn. That's it. It's a very active hand. I'll describe your hand, just to start with. It's a very active hand. It's a hand that has caution and impulsiveness mixed. If you haven't done it already, you will put pen to paper. Do you understand?
Very much.
You have a gift shown here for that. And obviously when you're told you've got a gift, it doesn't always have to be manifested, but it's there. And all you've got to do is have confidence about that, because it will be your success. Okay?
Well, I was relieved to discover that the palm was such a good read, but Namron hadn't finished. What was on the cards?
And now I want you to shuffle these. As you're shuffling them, just think about what you're doing, and when you think you've shuffled them enough, just put them down here, please.
I'm not awfully good at shuffling.
Well, you just do your best. Just mix them up. Well, the idea is just to get your atmosphere on the cards a little. You're being warned to be very clear about what it is. Predominant in your hand. Making money. Achieving. Ambition, naturally, is very much highlighted. And abundance of creative energy, which is very good. You're full of it. Okay? It's not you can. Really. I wouldn't like to push your path. That means time's up, by the way. The knocks.
Can you tell when people are going to die?
Within reason, yes.
Within reason.
But why should you
want
have to tell anybody when they're going to die? Because we're all going to die, and it's just a matter of time. It's really what quality of life are we going to have?
Do you see yourself as a therapist?
No, I don't see myself as anything other than whatever you see me as. I'm just a student of the occult, a genuine student of the occult. I want to try and find out. I've always been the same, and of course, like anything we endeavour to do, ultimately we are rewarded.
Who's that?
But sometimes the rewards of the occult are rather more tangible than getting a glimpse of your future.
Let's put the hat. Oh, look at this one. Pentacle. What about this? Madeline was conceived at Silbury Hill, which is a very, very old monument to the goddess. She was conceived there on the night of Lammas, which is a witchcraft festival. And she was born also on a witchcraft festival. She was planned very carefully according to astrology, and we did work fertility for ourselves, which is one of the things we do get asked for quite a lot. In fact, I wanted to have her at Greenwich Hospital so that she could be on the international zero meridian. So I did, and her birth was timed down to the 2nd. Where's the tower?
Madeline was created under magical circumstances and is a magical child. Whatever she chooses to do, that will never change. And the moment of birth has symbolised not only the fact that a new life has been brought about, but it symbolised the conjunction of male and female, the conjunction of the sun and the moon, the high priestess and the high priest, the mother and father, in the creation of the single most magical thing that can ever exist.
Where's your skull? Where's your skull, Madeline?
Nigel Bourne and Zeldy Bate are practising witches, high priest and high priestess of a coven in South London. Here they're opening the weekly meeting of the coven, which has about a dozen members. You don't have to live in the middle of a dark forest to be a witch. There are so many in this country, 60,000 some say, that even London is full of them. There are 3 covens within walking distance of Nigel and Zeldy's flat in Streatham. Like many people in the occult world, they first became interested in their teens. They spent the last 20 years learning what they call the craft, from tarot reading and astrology to ritual magic.
Essentially, witchcraft is the pagan religion. Most people's image of witchcraft, however, is very different from that. Most people imagine the broomstick, cauldron, big nose, pointed hat brigade, or the rampant sexual orgies, the sort of sex, drugs and rock and roll of the occult, which is not really what it's about at all. It's the appreciation and the religious appreciation and spiritual appreciation of the natural order of things. It's an understanding of the harmony of the universe and of your own place within that universe.
The craft has 2 deities. They could be seen, if you like, as part of a whole, part of a creative universal force, but they are very, very balanced. We have a god and we have a goddess. The god is usually represented by the sun. Of old, he was depicted as a deity with horns on his head, and sometimes even his lower half was an animal half, either with a tail or with hooves. And simply this is because any early community had to survive by either hunting or by rearing animals. Therefore, the animal itself became sacred, and the god is the provider, so he was seen in that way, which is where the confusion with the devil arrives. You know, we do not worship the devil, and nowhere does it say that the devil has horns, but certainly the god of the witches does have horns. Now, he has his consort, who is the goddess, and she's represented by the moon. And it's the union of the god and the goddess that gives us life, that brings the creative force into material manifestations, such as ourselves. We are the children of the goddess. How many hands has she got? 1 hand.
Like all religions, witchcraft has its own ceremonies, complete with costume, props and set speeches. Witches aren't afraid of admitting how much they enjoy the theatricality of it all.
The circle is being opened, and it is cast by the use of a ritual sword. The circle defines the area in which we work and takes us up onto a different plane. And the circle is then blessed and consecrated by the 4 elements. So we work at each quarter, for instance, air in the eastern quarter, and the circle will be blessed by the element of air. Air will be invoked, and we will continue to invoke each element in turn by performing the appropriate pentagram at each quarter of the circle.
Once the coven is in session, it's time for the blessing of the cakes and wine, a sort of cross between the Holy Communion and afternoon tea.
It's the pagan version of communion, or perhaps communion is the Christianized version of our ceremony. It's a very pretty little ceremony.
Once you've mastered all the details of the craft and its rituals, a process which can take a lifetime, the theory is that then you should be able to summon up the power of the gods.
When you come to understand the craft fully, you're aware of a constant vibration. I don't mean sort of from heavy lorries, but it's a constant force running through you. I mean, it was brought up nicely in the film Star Wars, the expression, "May the Force be with you."
Remember, a Jedi can feel the Force flowing through him.
You mean it controls your actions?
Partially, but it also obeys your commands.
It's very, very difficult to describe as an object or as from an objective viewpoint, because it is such a subjective experience. And lots of people have tried to describe it. It's really like having the most fun you've ever had and being as serious as you've ever needed to be, all at the same time. It's very, very big awareness.
The casting of a spell is one way of using this force. There are dozens of different spells. There are spells for healing, fertility, business success and romance. They're all different. This one is for bringing about a change of luck.
This magic spell should be performed on the night of the new moon. Light the candle. Place some incense in the censer. Turn each coin over thrice, saying,
"Turn my silver 3 by 3, turn the tide of luck to me, threefold lady of the night, work my wish by magic right."
Part of the day will be taken up with consultations, people coming and talking to us, asking our advice. Possibly I'll be making incenses, perfumes, making talismans for people. A lot of people ask us for help in various problem areas. This is where the word witchcraft actually comes from, because Wicca, which is the actual name of the religion, means wise. And in the old days, the witch would have been the wise person of the village. Now, we're seeing very much that way in the community here in Streatham. People come and talk to us. They'll stop us on the street and say, "What time should I plant my lettuces?" Anybody who's interested, the first full moon in the appropriate month. But always plant lettuces under a full moon. But that's the kind of thing we get asked.
Or they'll come with the sort of emotional problem, boyfriend's left or the husband has left, that sort of thing is very a common problem, I'm afraid. And they will come and say, "Can you do anything about it?" So the first thing we do is give them a tarot reading to see whether they need any magic done. Very often the situation is, no, you don't need magic done. Either the person will return or there's a reason why it has to break up. But yes, if necessary, we might make a talisman or give them a spell to work, something like that.
But people come for all sorts of reasons, spurious reasons very often. They imagine that it's going to be a life of sexual thrills and drunken orgies, which we've already seen it isn't. It's nowhere near that. In fact, it's damned hard work. And we've had people turn up on the doorstep at sort of 2 o'clock in the morning, knocking on the doorstep wearing nothing but a mat, saying, "I want to be initiated now," you know. And yeah, there's a lot of weirdos around, and the occult does attract a lot of weirdos simply because people don't know much about it.
I've been offered thousands of pounds to make somebody fall under a bus or whatever. The thing is that, first of all, it's forbidden in the craft. Again, to quote the Book of Shadows, if you cannot bless, you shall not curse. Secondly, we believe that whatever act of magic is performed, it returns threefold. So anybody who messes about sending curses out will get it back, and they'll get it back with a vengeance. Yes, it is possible to curse. I don't do it.
Well, all of that sounds pretty harmless. But are witches really just unofficial social workers? Isn't there more to it than that? As it happens, there is. Throughout history, there have been people who have practiced what's called high magic. Whereas witchcraft is a group activity involved in practical problems, high magic is private, personal, and carried out by individuals for their own benefit. The most famous high magician of them all was the so-called Beast, Aleister Crowley. He tried to make himself into the perfect human being. Gerald Seuster has been following the same quest since he was 14. So what's magic all about?
It's normally defined as the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will, a definition which covers every act of will. However, what is the purpose of doing it? The purpose is the raising of a perfected human being in a straight line. The purpose of it is for a human being to perfect every atom of his faculties, conscious and unconscious, intellect, emotion, physique, sexuality too, every atom, and raise it up to God so that that individual may know and do his will in the vast and starry universe we inhabit.
Magicians like Gerald have 4 practices which they carry out regularly. The first is divination, looking into the future with the use of tarot cards and astrology.
A second practice is that of astral travel. One's read about it in sensational novels as leaving one's body, say, and travelling to all kinds of weird and wonderful places. Magicians at present actually disagree as to whether those places objectively exist, or whether, in fact, we're talking about something within our own brains, something within our own minds, something which Jung, the great psychologist, termed the collective unconscious. The purpose of doing that is to become more familiar with other aspects of the universe other than walking down a street amidst a bunch of tower blocks. In other words, the magician is saying there is more to reality than the merely physical universe of the scientist.
The third practice is evocation, the bringing out from the mind of spirits or demons. These images of evocation are taken from a film by cult director Kenneth Anger, himself a practicing magician.
What's going on there is a more drastic process of psychoanalysis, that what the magician is doing is, let's say he decides that, well, I sometimes get these dreadful fits of anger. What's the demon of anger? He will evoke that demon, he will struggle with that demon, control that demon, and banish it, commanding it to be ever more obedient unto him. What's going on here is, it's not unlike a psychoanalyst taking out a complex, looking at it. A complex is trapped energy. That trapped energy is fed back into the psyche. It's a process of integration. Invocation is the most religious aspect of magic. What we're doing there is invoking gods into us. Or God, if you prefer. Magicians aren't dogmatic. I don't think it really matters. What is happening there is a process of bringing down an aspect of power behind the universe, whether one chooses to personify it and say, well, I'm now going to invoke Zeus, the king of the gods, or whether one says, I'm now going to make contact with the Jungian archetype of Zeus to bring it into me from the depths of my unconscious, I don't think it matters. What matters is that the ceremony works.
This is the beginning of one of the many rituals of invocation. The god that's being summoned is Horus, the Egyptian god of war, the deity that's called upon by magicians who feel they're lacking in mental strength or toughness.
But I think it's necessary that people understand just what a magician is doing. He is not pouncing about in robes for the fun of it. There is in existence a tried and tested dictionary of correspondences, all the symbols that fit with Horus. His number is 5, so one would have 5 candles. One would have a 5-pointed star on the floor. One would have incense, the smell of which reminded one of Horus, or Mars as he's called in Roman mythology. All the wands, cups, discs, swords, all these things, the incense, the candles, are basically simply techniques for concentrating the will of the magician and inflaming his imagination into a blazing stream of pure energy.
That's all very well, but how are you supposed to know that it's worked?
What one feels is an unmistakable presence. To say, well, is he here yet? If you're talking about the invocation of a god, it's a bit like saying, am I drunk yet? In other words, when it's there, you know. When it comes to evocation, by God you know, because it's pretty bloody frightening having a demon in the room. Part of the PT, if you like, for magic, is you've got to be able to visualize very strongly, and part of the training for that is simply to sit down in a chair, close your eyes and picture, let's say, a white cross, and hold that in your mind to begin with for 5 minutes. You will find, if you do this, that after, let's say, the 40th second, it becomes torture. It becomes almost impossible. The cross will turn upside down, you'll lose it altogether, songs will come into your head. You simply won't be able to hold that cross in your mind. And you will realize how your mind has the habit of jumping about like a frog. And anybody who persists enough, most people give up after about a week of trying to do it for 5 minutes. After 3 minutes, you feel like you've been sitting there for an hour when it starts. And I think that that sort of practice is enough to put off many people who want to live in a fantasy world, because you've actually got to work.
Magicians like Gerald Souster belong to a tradition that goes back centuries. Their rituals, as well as their attitudes, are rooted in the past. But there are groups on the occult scene which owe a lot less to black cloaks and dusty volumes of ancient rituals.
All power to the people who want to dress up and run around in circles and feel comfortable by feeling connected with some past technique. But as far as I'm concerned, that's not a survival technique, and that's not necessarily relevant to the world now. We're dealing with the atomic nuclear age, we're dealing with space, and magic, if it's real, deals with those things too.
The speaker is Genesis P. Orridge, Director of Psychic Youth, a group which believes in changing society through the magical transformation of individuals. But despite rejecting many of the trappings of magic, Genesis does not question its power.
Magic can achieve everything. There are essential factors in it, and the main factor is that the conscious and unconscious mind should be integrated, and that desires and ambitions should also be integrated with action. Basically, it's all about self-discipline. So we have a basic belief in the power of the human brain, or what we call neurological magic, which is that most phenomena, explained or unexplained, are actually simply a biological, physiological or psychological action of the brain. They're not demons, they're not spirits, they're not gods, they're not anti-gods. It's actually an ability like a muscle that you can learn to use and you can explore.
Psychic Youth puts across its modern magical message with the aid of all sorts of marketing aids, from badges to leaflets to t-shirts. And they've released half a dozen albums by their own group, Psychic TV. They've even issued their own manifesto. On video, of course.
The obvious is a protection. Not only does it make people run away, but it also deceives by its rapid commonness, and by the fact that in flat people's minds, whatever is simple cannot be serious.
Like a lot of things in the occult business, this all sounds a bit obscure. What they're driving at is simply that most people just accept the things that happen in life without really questioning them. They are, in psychic youth jargon, flat people.
When you rely on looking at everything around you and your situation in one light, you know, the way you were brought up to see things, then you're not engaging much of yourself in experiencing anything that you go through. So you're flat, you know, you haven't got extra dimensions, you're not looking at things with more of yourself that could be engaged in looking at what you're doing, and therefore you'd see it more, you'd get more things done more efficiently, you'd be doing things, you know, that are more true to what you should be doing. So these rituals and stuff tend to awaken like other points of view in your own head.
There would be nothing more threatening to Margaret Thatcher at the moment than a nation of people who were awake, thinking very hard and asking why. I think we can see all around us the results of bad magic, which is magic unfocused and misunderstood, power used for its own sake, potency castrated in order to serve the interests of a few aristocrats.
It is up to everyone to accept the power their bodies are endowed with and decide...
Psychic youth have their own suggestions for turning so-called flat people into multi-dimensional ones.
So we suggest that they think about, for example, their ultimate secret sexual fantasy and reach orgasm while they're doing that. Now that's not for gratification. What it's doing is, A, it's pleasurable, and it's always good to learn in a pleasurable way as opposed to a non-pleasurable way. Secondly, without realizing it, they're learning how to analyze themselves far more deeply than is normal. They sit at home and they have to go through all the possibilities and choose one, and that's not what's normally done. And then finally, when one has an orgasm, the conscious and the unconscious mind are for a moment linked. By transferring to your subconscious mind the things you really would like to happen, you will naturally start to make them happen because you shed the unnecessary activity. You don't waste time.
Psychic youth have tried to capture the mood of these rituals, or sigils as they're called, in this film, Moonchild.
The film is a spell. It's a description of a spell to create a new person or a new stage in people through compassion and through thought. And it's a construct, just like a spell is.
Psychic youth may seem very different from all the other manifestations of magic we've seen in this programme, but they're not that different. All the groups practice techniques, spells, invoking the gods, masturbation, which they think will make the mind do strange and wonderful things. Another thing these people have in common, they all believe it works.
Don't ever believe what you're told. A chair may be a chair 99.9% of the time, but if you're a magical person, you know that one day it might not be a chair. It might vanish.
Magic certainly works. Down to the lowest type of magic, which might be to attract a lover, or to create a child, to bring fertility, to help a person find a job, even to help to get money. But it only works because you will back that up with real effort. It's no good if I go and do a ritual to gain money, for instance, which I could do tonight. It's no good then just sitting there and expecting money to tumble out of the ceiling. Life isn't like that.
Anybody who doubts whether magic works or not, really there's only one honest way to tackle the question. Take it up and see what happens. If somebody did magic with dedication for 1 year, and at the end of that year said, well, I'm afraid I did 2 hours a day every day, and absolutely nothing happened, well, one couldn't really argue with that individual. But 2 hours a day, every day for a year, oh, I think something would happen. Something would definitely happen.
Le